Ooh. Okay, so now we even are recorded. So welcome everyone online, and welcome everyone.
Vous êtes tous la bienvenue, vous en ligne et vous ici dans la salle. Merci. C'est une session en ligne, beaucoup plus que les autres sessions parce qu'on n'avait pas beaucoup d'argent pour pouvoir faire voyager les gens pour venir ici.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Very good. I'm just doing a little intro of you. Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Just a little pre-intro to the intro.
Donc, j'essaie d'introduire pour le moment. Nous allons avoir cette session maintenant.
Achieved since the last 3.5 years working on DHIS2 for education. I mentioned it in the morning, and we have worked, we have worked very hard in order to see how we can leverage on the IT capacity in the country, looking at the platform, how we can support the DHIS2 for education in countries. And we had, next slide, we had a very, I would say, glamorous academy in Banjul in April. It's late April, in the end of the April, not long time ago, where we actually were 118 people together for a week to learn and share experiences for DHIS2 for academy, not for education. And we've had 8 country Ministry of Education people coming from 8 countries. We had 18 countries represented. We had many of the stakeholders in the educational space, and we had, as I said, 118 participants. But what we had was actually 70 people from Ministry of Education, all the levels in the Gambia. And that made a huge of a difference because we had all the regions, we had all the way down to the head teacher, we had the cluster monitors, we had all the stakeholders within the educational space even, and even the West African Exam Council. So we really had a week where we could discuss all the parts of the educational space. We had two, I want to share this just very quickly because I think it played out super cool because we had 2 days of conference where we did advocacy and sharing. And then the 3 days were training for people that had technical training, like a pure normal academy. And for all the stakeholders and the more stakeholder type, it was a round table strategic discussions for 3 days. And that's really, that proved very, very valuable because we ended up with a fantastic result. Next slide. And then it's over to Alpha. We were actually able to make a communique shared by all the participants, even NORAD that had already left the country, got this communique after and endorsed it after. So Alpha, why don't you go through tell your version of the communique work and the week we spent in your country. Over to you, Alpha. Alpha Ba, he's the head of Ministry of Education monitoring and evaluation team, EMI's team. So very, very instrumental, and he had been a keynote speaker here in annual conference in 2019. So welcome back, Alpha, although virtual. Over. Can you hear me, Alpha? You're not muted. I can see you're not muted.
Alpha's dropped out.
No, I see him. I saw him.
No, but
Are you there, Alpha? If not, I continue. No problem. So this communique was are you there, Alpha?
I'm muted.
Ah, yeah, I saw you were muted. So unmute, and now you are unmuted. Cool.
Okay,
So
now I'm muted. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Christine, and thank you, everybody. Greeting from the Banjul, the Gambia. We are really very happy to participate on this very important conference, given the fact that it is really responding to what we've been trying to address in the education data for a long time. So just to tell you a little bit of background, we are glad as a country, the Gambia, that now we are moving from theory and to practice. From 2018, we've been talking about partners and institutions around data, has been talking about what are we going to do. And finally, we've got partners trying to do something about it. And one of the things that we did was convene everybody in these partners who were working on it since 2018 to work on an IMIS Academy. In the Gambia, the IMIS Academy was really well received from the executive to everybody. We all realized that it was for the first time the Gambia was hosting an international academy on data and statistics. And one of the most important part is the fact that not only when it went very well, it also ended up with a communique, which means we are beginning to have some action point that the partners and member countries that visited or came to the Gambia agreed on a roadmap in terms of what they are going to do to ensure that the solution for data in education is finally realized. So we recognize the need that we recognize the importance and promoting evidence-based decision-making, noting that IMIS on the Ministry of Education will provide quality education data and the implementation of education strategic plan. The partners agrees that we are aware that IMIS is a global and continental and national level. The need for strengthening education management at this level and subnational level, including schools, is very important. We are aware that ongoing IMIS initiative at the global, continental, and national levels aim at strengthening IMIS, observing that the success DHIS2 has done in other sectors like health, which is the very close partner in the Gambia, health and education. We thought that experience is very important. So that is another opportunity that this partnership had. We recognize that the role of regional institutions like the African Union is very important. That is already having a strategy for education, CESA 2016-2025, which is also supporting member countries to ensure that we are able to have a lasting solution for the education data in Africa. Now, these partners agree all this, and then we told that at the national level, we will have harmonization process. How do you harmonize SDG 4 and CESA, for example? And how do you ensure that that harmonization is done at the local and subnational levels? We also agree that at the national and IMIS harmonization, how do we partners work together? You have a lot of partners in education. You have UNICEF, you have UNESCO, you have the CSOs. How do we ensure that they work in harmony with government and ensuring that we develop policies that are really responsive to the national and continental or international level agenda? And then how do you develop, how do you mobilize resources? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is resources for human, that will be supporting the ecosystem at the local level. How do you ensure there is enough resources, human and financial? So then we had another point that we agreed in this communique, which is the capacity building component. How do you ensure that we institutionalize capacity building at all levels and promote the DHIS2 academic model to include education use cases? For example, what is happening today in this conference is how we will see use cases, and how do we ensure that this going forward, we'll be having more of this, more use cases in this kind of DHIS2 conference. Now, we also agree that we encourage local institutions and training institutions, universities or training institutions in the local areas. What role would they play? How do we ensure that they will be providing that capacity in the ministries or in the governments? Now, how do we use the students to do apprenticeship in school level or regional level? How do they do internship? the most other important part is what about the research from the universities? How does it inform the next level? How does it inform the finding of the research? Because research is done at the ministries, but it's very limited, and the university is an area where research can be done a lot. And here is a case with UIO. University of Oslo is doing a lot of research to inform informatics. So going forward, how do we do that at the local and grassroots level? Now, we thought that we need to conduct blend training using existing regional centers for excellence. So we are trying to see how do we ensure that we will have special centers across the continent or across the board where we will have, this will be the centers of excellence for EMIS, learning from other centers of excellence like the one ADIA has and the one World Bank has. So develop shared global, continental, and regional and national resources for everyone to use. Now, there was another component that is develop, component 3, develop and package appropriate messaging to put forward the case of DHIS2 and EMIS. So this is like the advocacy. How do you ensure that the
Are you there, Alpha? We lost you. We lost you. I continue from there. So the point 3 was also discussed. I mean, remember, Jean-Luc can tell also, because Jean-Luc from headquarters was also there. Many of us was there. These are actually outcomes from this discussion, from this week. So we also talked about how the platform that is flexible and can be customized. We have seen that from cases, and we will hear just after this, we will hear the cases, how we can provide granularity in data analysis from national, subnational, but all the way down to school level, and empower local stakeholders and community by enhancing data use, all the way to the.
Hey,
yeah, I'm now in the end of point 3, Alpha. Going to the school reporting card, we empower local stakeholders at community level to use data. Over.
Yes. Okay.
Please continue, Alpha. Maybe we lost you again. Yeah, we don't hear you. So whenever you can talk. We can't hear you now. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I thought you are hearing me. Now I'm on the last point. Last 3 points.
Breaking.
Okay. Just seeing the missing data. Now we have a lot of data time, but has been.
I think we are on the missing data. So Alpha, we can't really hear you. So maybe we give another try. Otherwise, I continue. I think.
Yes, I was talking about the.
You are really breaking.
Missing data. So as education data managers,
You are breaking that much, Alpha. So maybe we take a little pause.
It would be addressed by the giving of that.
Sorry, Alpha, we can't hear you. Sorry. Sorry, Alpha, we cannot hear you. I think I just take over from here. This is one of the reasons why we didn't want to do this a virtual academy fully fledged, because it's difficult with internet and it's difficult with presentations remotely. We tried. Sorry, Alpha, I'll just take the second, because due to in respect of time, we have so much on the agenda. And if Alpha, you just try once in a while, and then we'll see. So addressing the missing data was also very, very important, because we also need to fill the gaps. There are a lot of gaps in the data, and you can see from education envying the health a little bit, or having access to data reported and reporting routines and institutionalized data reporting. So we also need to address the gaps where they are from the very global, national, subnational, school and community level, through strengthening data collection processes. So making this kind of new processes also is important. So also try to leapfrog from health, not doing the same mistakes. So we will take over health very soon. By this communique, Nora actually told me, Christine, I told you, you will leapfrog in the health sector because we never had a communique from any academy ever. So we are already a little bit on the go to definitely leapfrog and maybe coming more far than the health sector. It's not a competition, but we can have some healthy competition. And then, of course, leveraging cross-sector linkages. We will hear more from that. So a lot of cross-sector linkages between health and education, water and sanitation and education, the campaign, measles campaigns, etc., etc. It's a lot of cross. We need to leverage that one and make it even stronger. The digitalization across, and to see how we can strengthen the institutions in both in education, health, and so forth. Support triangulation of data by different actors that will also support the quality of the data, and promote efficient use of available resources through sharing and clustering. And we have seen from already, we have seen how much that can be shared at the district level. Even internet connections can be shared through health education, so you can have access to data. So this is very promising. And of course, we would like to strengthen the DHIS2 Academy Community of Practice by you guys, everyone, to sign up for the COP, but also create a lively community of practice around surrounding with master students, PhD students. We already have 3, and they are all 3 in the room. Please raise. Oh, wake up! Hello. From Norway, Uganda, and Gambia, supported by DHIS2. We are very happy for that, and hopefully we will have more. There are rumors saying that there will be more funds coming from more PhDs. So this is super important to create this kind of community that we see also around the health. So this is a communique that was endorsed by all the participants in that very academy. So we are very happy for that. I mean, now it's time to leverage this. This is all from the opening. We're going to the real opening from African Union, and we have asked iPads that also were present. African Union was present there, but both iPad and Nadea in the academy. However, had some visa problems, so not being able to come. But I will call upon Jaji Lukman, that is a policy officer for EMIS documentation from IPAD, which is Pan-African Institute of Education for Development. Over to you, Lukman.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Christine. I just have to share my screen quickly. Okay. I don't know if you can see my screen now.
Not yet.
Okay, il arrive. Okay, I've just shared. Okay, il arrive.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind opening statements, and thank you very much for presenting also the outcomes of our Banjul Academy. I think we did quite achieve a lot in that meeting. You know, getting to know what the platform has to offer the education sector, particularly on the continent. So I'll be talking about the African Union's involvement in this process and how we intend to take the process forward, hoping it will set at least some form of scheme or background for discussions around how Africa intends to adopt this platform at the continental level. But before I start, I would like to just speak about a few key messages that my presentation will be speaking to. This is, of course, we know how boring sometimes PowerPoints could get. So it's important I put the key messages forward first, and then I can start with the details later. So the key messages that we hope to pass across during this presentation is that IPED is the African Union institutions that is mandated by the heads of state and government to serve as the Continental Education Observatory. And this institution, of course, also is in charge of maintaining a continental IMIS database for our member states. The second key message we would like to put across is that following the academy in Banjul that has been talked about, a decision was reached internally at the AUC to proceed with adopting this platform for regional and continental level use. This means, of course, that we had to go through the different approval process within the AUC to get a go-ahead to use this platform. And then why are we adopting it and what do we want to use it for? Like I always say, anything that we do, anything we adopt, any partner we talk to, they are all for the benefit of what happens at the level of the member states. So of course, it's to support our AU member states first for innovative data collection and usage, not just collection, but also for them to be able to use that data towards first meeting what their own national priorities are, of course, which is national goals or national targets, regional, which is the AU target, and then global target, of course, which is the SDGs. And then finally, the last key message would be that our regional economic communities, which are the RECs, we have ECOWAS, Central Africa, SADC, and the rest, are crucial towards the adoption of implementation and deployment of this platform. So then I can go into the more boring stuff so that we have an idea of how we came about all of these key messages. So I would like to give in 1 minute or 30 seconds to just give you a historical context of the institution that is going to be leading the adoption of DHIS on the continent, of course, which is the African Union IPED. Is that in 1961, the ministers of education at that time, education and scientific research, expressed their intention to establish an institution capable of developing African countries through education, because there was development in different phases and different pathways at that time. But a few of them, I think 11 of them, came together and decided to use education as the bedrock for their development. And then in 1973, the African Bureau of Educational Sciences, which is BAS, was finally formed. And this, of course, gave life to the intentions that they had. It was operationalized in 75 and hosted by the Faculty of Educational Sciences of Kisangani of Zaire, former Zaire actually, because now it's Congo Kinshasa, Congo DRC. Yeah, so in 86, of course, the OAU's ordinary session, it became a specialized agency of the Organization of African Unity, the OAU, through this decision. And the mission was to promote and encourage scientific research in education and all of that. So in 2001, in another summit again, Executive Committee of Ministers of BAS, which were the 11 member states that formed it, it was restructured. I know UNESCO played a key role in that process. ADEA also played a key role in that process. And it was renamed IPED at that time. It was renamed from BAS to the Pan-African Institute for Education for Development. And in 2006, it became the Observatory for Education in Africa to the African Union Commission. So that gives some kind of background of where we're coming from. Yeah. And then moving forward, of course, the mandate is to collect, conserve, analyze, disseminate, and update information on development of education in Africa, assist in updating education policies and the adaptation to recent geopolitical, economic, technological, and scientific cultural changes as well, develop information sharing on education policies, policy development, and serve as a platform for accessing information on major trends. So this is speaks directly to the activity that we're doing now. If you talk about trend, then you have to talk about data, because data then must inform trend. And that's why we want to strengthen that data component of our work to ensure that we're able to advise member states on what the best trends are. To enhance the knowledge base for developing and evaluating education policies, as well as interaction amongst researchers, decision makers, and practitioners. So convening, this more or less speaks to convening the different knowledge providers on the continent and outside of the continent to deliberate, which is of course what the HISP is currently doing. organize statistics and develop indicators. We do that very well occasionally. Generate continental reports. The essence of the data we collect is to ensure that we're able to provide some form of communique like this, some kind of report, some kind of consumable knowledge that can be used by member states and partners. And then it serves, of course, monitoring mechanism for education development and programs on the continent. So our case, why are we adopting DHIS2, knowing fully well that this is not the first time that we are getting introduced to different platforms coming from different partners. And of course, that decision wasn't very difficult to make, only owing to the fact that we had experienced with a couple of platforms in the past, and we decided to then proceed with this. The first one, which of course is the most important one for us as a commission, it is backed by a community. This is very, very, very important. When something is backed by a community, you can be very sure that it's not going anywhere. It's harder for a community to die than for an individual or a company or a firm or you know, to go out of business. But if it's backed by community of different experts across the world, different programmers, then you can be sure that the platform will be there for as long as possible. And the TA and whatever it is that is needed to keep it running will always be there. So it is also backed by a network of developers, you know, across the world. It is not very heavy on technical assistance, or because most of it you can actually just join the community of practice and follow by yourself. One of the key things that we talk about in Africa is that we've been hammering so much on data collection, and to the point whereby some member states are so good at it, at data collection, that they have so much data, but they don't know what to do with it. Or they still need more capacity to take it forward from there. Now your data collection process has been strengthened, then what then do you do? So this has a very nice and a wide array of data visualization tools that could be used to perform simple and complex analysis on the fly, which solves that problems of, you know, too much data or no data at all, too much data in the hands of member states. This platform will help them with that process. For an institution like ours, we are very big on licenses. What does it mean? What are the legal implications of adopting this platform? And in studying it, we looked at the license it offers, whether it's the popular GNU, which of course has a little bit of problems for an institution like ours, but it has the BSD license, of course, which means that you are free to use, to utilize, to turn around as long as the license information requirements is kept. So this, of course, it's very useful for us, and it's not something most institutions, for example, would really want to dig down into, because once it's GNU, the general user license, people assume it's just okay. But if you dig deep, go further into the GNU, you find out that it may not necessarily be appropriate for an institution like ours. So the BSD license is just perfect for us. Data sharing across multiple instances is also very key, because if you're going to be operating at the continental level, we want then, or at the regional level, for example, we want, say, for example, member states should be able to conduct data sharing exercises. In fact, one of the things that we've been playing with and toying with internally is the fact that the concept of data collection is something that we want to relegate and replace it with the concept of data sharing. Data sharing in the sense that systems talk to each other, sharing data based on standards that we may have set, you know, either through using popular data sharing formats or developing internally a sharing format of our own. So this, of course, is also very key why we chose to go with a DHIS2. It can be easily customized. We've seen during the academy, the technical officers did a fantastic job in showing us how easy it is to customize the DHIS platform. So there is nothing that we can achieve without money. Of course, it is very important that I talk about it. And the funding plan that we have for this, of course, is to use the AU statutory budgets that we have. It's not a lot, I know, but it's something that at least could get us started. And then we intend to bring partners on board into that process as well. But for now, for the first couple of months that we're starting with this platform, I think we would bear the cost of, you know, of convening, of either travel or all of those things. We would try to bear the cost on our side. And then we could also use partner resources because we're also a beneficiary of the KICS Africa 19. We're a member of the KICS Africa 19 consortium, which has UNICEF, UNICEF SRO and UNESCO ICBA as members as well. So it's possible for us to also get resources from that pot as well. So in a nutshell, our use case is very simple. Our use case is very simple, is that, as I mentioned earlier, we are responsible for to serve as the monitoring mechanism for education development on the continent, which means that we have to monitor and measure the implementation of the education component first of Agenda 2063, a second also for the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, which is the CESA 1625. So we are responsible for monitoring and reporting to the heads of states the progress our member states have made in domesticating or implementing these different frameworks. So for the SDG, for the CESA and the Agenda 2063, we do have indicator frameworks. So the first use case in this case then would be for our member, for us to be able to upload all of the indicators, all of the 45 or 50 indicators that we have in the CESA indicator framework into the DHIS platform and allow our member states to report on that. Then the second thing then would be the SDG. I didn't start with the SDG because first we have to start from home. Of course, the SDG indicators, we have been doing a lot of work around aligning some of these indicators together such that we will reduce the burden of responding, or the burden that is required to respond to two frameworks on our member states. Because if you analyze it on the continent, the member states that are responsible for reporting to the SDG4 indicators are the same member states that are responsible for responding to CESA indicators. So we do have an ongoing process with UNESCO Institute for Statistics, which is the benchmarking initiative, the benchmarking process where we're trying to put together some of these indicators such that member states just have to report to once. So DHIS would be the appropriate channel and the appropriate pathway for these member states to report on these indicators to us. So then the UIS then can pull data that is reported into this platform from us. Then the second thing, of course, is to promote innovative data use. We cannot hammer, we cannot overemphasize the need for us to strengthen usage as much as we're trying to strengthen collection and ability to make data available. So of course, the DHIS platform makes that really easy because once data is there, you can turn the presentation as you deem. So we have a short roadmap. We have actually a bigger internal roadmap within the AU, but I'm just bringing out the key in no particular order. The three key elements of that roadmap is first that we had already informed our REC in one of our meetings. We did inform them about this process, and we've agreed now to have our initial consultation with the regional economic communities, the 5 of them, to be hosted, I think, in Abuja. I'm not sure yet. I will confirm that later. To be hosted by ECOWAS, and we bring all of the other 4 RECs and the HISP team to be part of that process, where we then discuss the modalities that is required for adoption. Number 1, of course, is to identify a pilot REC, because it's better we pilot this within a small REC rather than going all the way to the continent. We pilot within the REC, upload all of these indicators in the benchmark, the global 7 indicators for benchmark, the 45 indicators as well for the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, and then we let those member states within the region alone report using that platform. So the success of that would inform us in spreading to the other REC. So like I mentioned in the beginning, in my key messages, that the regional economic communities are very crucial in the successful adoption and implementation of this platform. I would also like to inform that a demo by the team, and we really like to thank you for that. A fantastic demo was given to us already, and the development is on. We're still continuing, but they've given us a really beautiful platform already, and that platform then is what we'll take to the consultation with the RECs for them to make more comment into it and find ways to domesticate it into what is useful at their region, because the way it may be used in ECOWAS may be different from the way it will be used, for example, in Southern African region. We want to ensure that it is domesticated for regional and national level use. And at the continental level, what we just do is to pull data from the different regional instances that are running. And of course, I've spoken about the last one.
Jaji,
Yes.
Can you finish in a couple of minutes, please? And
yeah, this is my last
and
slide.
also, for those of you that want to see the demo, Knut has a demo up here now, so I don't think we have time to showcase it, but the demo is here. So thank you for mentioning that one, Lukman. So. Okay,
thank you. So this is my last slide, actually. And then the last one, of course, I talked about the fact that deployment then is what will happen first at the first rec. And that entail, of course, conducting training, training and capacity building for the officers and the experts at these recs. Of course, the funding will be done by us and by the recs themselves, and if possible, to get for some resources from the development partners. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to me. And I wish all of us a successful deliberation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jaji. We are so unhappy that you didn't receive the visa in time. So let's very fast move into to hear about the examples. So now we'll do a consolidated slide deck from all the countries. So very fast, Knut is just giving a short intro.
So,
and the next is
what we're doing with DHIS2 in the education sector is quite a range of things that we can do. So I have to be closer to the mic. Yes.
Don't go past the chair.
All right. So obviously we already heard that you can use it for a regional or continent-wide repository for data, and we know that has been done, for example, by the East African Community, the West Africa Health Organization previously. So we want to do similar things now in close collaboration with the African Union. The other very basic use case is to get the annual census, the historical data, the aggregate data, and into DHIS2 and enhance data use all the way down to the district level, and actually see the data that's already there. But we also want to go beyond that, and Alpha is one of our main backers that really want to push the limits of what is the typical EMIS down to the registering individual students, individual teachers, and we will hear some cases for that. And basically, we are still exploring the limits of what we're doing with DHIS2 in the EMIS space. We're not going to do everything. That's why it's so great to have these PhD and master students. So I think we should just go straight to the countries. We're starting with the Gambia. Yes.
Welcome to. Yes. Thank you very much. Good morning. Afternoon, sorry. I'm so used to.
Good morning.
Good morning for me. So I am. Thank you very much for setting up the platform nicely for me, Christine, Knut, and Alpha. I hope the presentation will make a little more sense now because I have not put so much on it. So as we said, I'm from the Gambia Ministry of Education, and we are trying to push the boundaries of what exactly is EMIS, and we are trying to take DHIS2 along with us. And the reason why we are doing that is look at the picture that you have there in front of you. There can be many interpretations that we can get from this, but one thing that I would like us to look at is the outfit of these children that are there. As it stands, the education is free in the Gambia from 2013 up to now. No one is paying a fee, but still you have children that are with uniform and others that are with no uniform. So one key takeaway, that is one of the motivations of this shift, is to make sure that the ministry targets the interventions to those that are needing, because education is free now. The people that are in the upper quintile of the wealth group are able to spend more on education, more on transport, more on lunch money. But then one of the barriers of the lower quintile was the access to education, was the fees. The fees were removed, but still 70% of what the households, what education spends on the children is coming from the household in the form of transport money. So which is still a problem for the people that are in the lower middle income. So it's very important to make sure we have targeted interventions. And because now education is free, some subsidies are given to these to the schools, and as this school that is in the picture is responsible for the management of the school, improvement of resources and all that. And as it stands, the ministry is looking at every child as equal one, whether you are special needs or not, and then the funds are distributed that way. But clearly, schools that are special schools that have more special needs need additional resources that they need to input structures that are not necessary in other places, that like ramps and other structures for the special needs. So there is real need for us to identify the people that are in need and then use that to make a picture of the schools and what kind of resources they need, and use that to distribute the resources that we have. And as we said, education has these three keys: equitable, inclusive, and quality education as the main policy items in the of our education system. And inclusion being mostly targeted not only in the special needs, but special needs are a big part of that. The ministry is coming up what we call an individualized education plan that is trying to look at what the individual students need and then try to make sure the interventions are given agenda. We have what we call itinerant teachers, and itinerant teachers are supposed to go to the schools and identify these the people that have special needs, the children that have special needs. And we have adopted this tool from the Washington Group on Disability Statistics, what we call the Child Functioning Module, which is a tool that basically assesses the kind of special needs and put them into correct categorizations, and then give them the kind of categorization that can be assessed and tested at the hospital, and then inputted that in the system. Formally, what will happen is once that test and categorization is done, the data is then aggregated, and most of the impact of the data is lost as it's aggregated. But now we need an information system to make sure that individual level information is inputted, so that we'll be able to make better planning for those children that are in the system. And then put a face on the out of school, being able to map out, as we said, the children that are in school, and then move their localization from the school as they stand in the sort of aggregate data, because we count the children that are in the school. If you are able to get to individual data, we will know exactly the settlement that are coming from and know the coverage of the settlement, individual settlements, not just the schools, and then we will be able to target interventions on the out of schools that are there. And in the longer term, with all of this information compiled and then cross-checked against socioeconomic data that is available in form of surveys and all that, we can pick out some early warning indicators that could give us tips on why exactly 50% of the students that are starting in the school don't get up to senior secondary school. So every year, a whole cycle of 12 years, 100, we have more of a population, the population of 7-year-olds, everyone is getting into the school system as we speak, but 50% of them will not make it to the end of the education cycle. So some drop out of the way. So this could easily give us some indicators on why that exactly is happening, and maybe some indicators on how to solve that. So, and then that's where DHIS2 come in. They started in the Gambia in 2018, where we first met with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, the department that I'm working for, and they had a signing MOU with the Minister of Permanent Secretary. And then that was followed by capacity building of the core team, including us on customization and the development of the modules that we are going to implement later. And that includes the national census on all learners that we have done in the country at the moment. We started with the pilot in 200 schools, with Chromebooks. And then after when that was done, we reused that resources, that Chromebooks, and then that capacity that was built in that pilot school to collect individual data from all the students that are in the country as we speak, and which we are hosting in the DHIS2. And then we have what we call the school report card implementation, and a case of the data must speak initiative, an example of, and it's also something that has been digitized and is available in the DHIS system. And they helped us upgrade what we call a daily agenda system that is in the country, that we have upgraded from being a simple SMS based to now a digital app that is used by schools to send attendance data. And then the famous DHIS2 Academy, which one came out with this communique to help build the interest from the ground level, from the regional officers. The appetite was wet. Hopefully there'll be more support for us when we want to implement it. And then the PhD research that has been conducted in this institution on the MS6 by me. So I'm one of the 3 PhD students in education. So I'm so proud to call myself one of them. So, and then this is just an example of some of the things that have been done. And the next step that we plan to take up in addition to extending this implementation from just this 200, and then, from the national SSI, to make sure this infrastructure is available. And then we have this ecosystem, developed through the university and other tools to make sure that this development and this progress that we have done is sustained. And then integration of HR data and then examination data and other sort of data that could help us shed more light on the data that we have currently in the system. So thank you very much.
Another PhD student.
Yes. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all of you. I'm Pramod from HIS Sri Lanka, and I'll be presenting on behalf of HIS Sri Lanka, as well as my colleagues from Education Ministry of Sri Lanka who's joining online. Right. So when it comes to Sri Lanka, I mean, the title here is government-driven implementation. So why we have named like that is in Sri Lanka, we have a well-established social services system, which includes both health and education. So just like in the health sector, we have a well-established paper-based system in education information management that has been there for a couple of decades. So we are kind of trying to facilitate that and probably identify the gaps in the existing information system, which is mostly paper-based, and to make the decision-making process more efficient and facilitate it to happen at all levels. So, and the other good thing is we have good human resources available at national and subnational level, which includes provincial and one level below that, which is called zonal level. So again, like learnings from health. So we have very good experience in implementing DHIS2 for health for so many years. So we did not want to kind of learn everything from the scratch. So we kind of took forward whatever the learnings that we have from the health sector when we try to apply it to the education domain. So what we did initially was to engage with the high-level stakeholders. So we engaged with the Ministry of Education, their highest level, and we had some rounds of discussions together with the University of Oslo to understand what is the requirement and what are the advantages they will have in the long run if they use DHIS2. Mind you, this is never a green field. Education Ministry already has some experience using few other digital systems, so they always needed a justification why they should be using DHIS2, which is again another digital system, but a kind of a special one. So one peculiar thing, very strange for our approach, as always, is we focus on capacity building, especially the core capacity building. So we focused on how to build capacity within the Ministry of Education so that they will not be depending from external stakeholders, including us. We are just there to build capacity and help the ministry, and the Ministry of Education is the entity that should take this forward. So to do that, we focused on that, and then again we networked them and we linked them with with our global network. So for example, initially we did it online during the pandemic, and we are still in the pandemic, but we were kind of lucky to be present at the famous Gambia Academy. So what you're seeing here is me together with the two Ministry of Education colleagues. I'm sure they must be online. Thank you for joining. So we kind of had a booth to explain our approach and our learnings and share it with the network. So they kind of got first-hand experience into our fascinating HIS network in Banjul. Right, so the journey so far, as I mentioned, we have engaged with the high-level stakeholders in the Ministry of Education, and we try to understand the existing information flows. We did not want to disrupt it, so we just want to understand it and to kind of use DHIS2 to help better in the process of decision making. And we focused on core capacity building by conducting DHIS2 in-country academies. So these are in-country academies, even though these, as you see here, DHIS2 Academy in-country for the core team in the Ministry of Education. So in addition to this regular kind of like, it was not just one-off academy, but it was like, altogether we have had several sessions to kind of build their capacity on different areas around DHIS2 and the implementation. And so we are working with them. In fact, we are not kind of customizing the DHIS2 instance for them. It's the Ministry of Education who's doing that, and we are kind of guiding them. And we also have these weekly meetings to kind of facilitate and speed up the process. And so far, what we have implemented at the moment is an aggregate system, aggregate data set to obtain the teacher information from all the national schools spread across the country. So that's what we have at the moment, because we had some challenges implementing anything beyond that during the times of pandemic, as well as probably some of you are aware, due to the current political economic situation of the country, we are having some challenges. But after the Banjul Academy, now we are really keen on implementing DHIS2 tracker. So we already have some, not some, actually 4+ million information, which is kind of stuck in another digital platform, where the Ministry of Education is exploring the possibility of importing it into DHIS2 and trying to use DHIS2 for the student information system as a pilot project, and also to customize the DHIS2 tracker to capture the teacher information. And also another kind of, again, a unique scenario we are trying to apply DHIS2 for education is to use DHIS2 for urgent deployments. I mean, like we'll be talking more about it tomorrow, like how we used DHIS2 initially during the pandemic to capture port of entry data in Sri Lanka, which was an emergency requirement. So DHIS2 is really good at that. And even in education sector, we are trying to do that. So that's the plan for now, but probably we will have more updates for the next annual conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamod. Now we're crossing over to Jerry Aziawa from Western Central Africa to give us a little insight into the Togo implementation.
Okay, hi everyone. So I'm going to talk about the Togo implementation. Here it's a little bit different because from the word go, they already have a system called strategic. And when discussing with the ministry, they were like, we need to still work with strategy because it's convenient for us, but there's a need actually to analyze data into the system. I mean, because with strategic, they had limited analysis options. So we are like, okay, fine. So we will actually work with you, design a system, then actually have this interoperability between strategic and DHIS2 so that you could have data at the central level and have this data at all levels, okay? So what we have in Togo in strategic is enrollment data, teacher data, infrastructure data, finance data, and so on and so forth. So the thing also is that they also want to build something, an integrated system. So they wanted a system whereby they can actually get data from various systems that they have, and they can use it for cross analysis. And also they wanted to improve school management at the lower level. So they needed data at the lower level in order to empower the people at the level of, district level and school level. But one thing we needed to do was to start with the configuration. So we actually trained them, okay, in using or configuring DHIS2. We configure it with them, of course, and then we actually build the interoperability with strategic with them. And then we are currently actually working in developing outputs, and we're going to have a training session next 2 weeks in actually having those outputs, targeted outputs into the system. So this also has been in a participatory approach in a way that they are always involved in any development and every strategy we take. Okay, so on your left, you have a strategy, just a snapshot. I mean, we have a lot of interfaces for that, just the left. And then we try to actually get that data and put it in, for example, DHIS2. So this is an example of a pivot table having the data from strategy. So in French, is the number of learners per grade for primary, for example. So we were able to import those data. We had the data for enrollment in financial in the system, and also individual data for teachers. So we can, for example, do things like this, where you see at the bottom, you have this type of dashboard where we have on your far left, gross enrollment rate. It's in French, sorry. And then you have, how do you call it? Just at the bottom, how do you call it? Teacher-learner ratio, okay? So it's in, and the number of learners per gender. And then this is like the number of learners per distance. So they want to check the ones that are far from the school and the ones that are close from the school, and so on and so forth. So we've been working with them in building those outputs, but it's actually a work in progress. So this brings me to my last slide, which is the next step. So we are still working in building a lot of output to empower the schools, the districts, because the aim is to mainly work at the lower level. Because what happens usually is that data is actually punched in strategic and is sent to the national level using USB key, because they don't have like a server client architecture, even though strategic is able to do so. What we actually are trying to do now is to build capacity and make sure that people can use the data at the lower level. So we're going to talk about making sure that we have those data at that level, and also implement something that looks like a school report card, like we have in the Gambia. So we're going to work in with the Gambian app. We're going to have a demo of that app now, but we're going to have a generalized app that Togo can use, because they are also keen into using it. Then we are going to implement this pilot phase where we want to see how people use data at the lower level, at the level of cluster monitors. When it comes to the Gambia, they call it inspectorate here, and at the level of schools. And of course, when we were actually building the system, they were like, what if we can add this type of data, exam, human resources? Yes, it's possible to add those data, watch data, survey data, mixed signals data. So we said, yeah, it is possible. So the aim is to actually have those data into the system so that we could have like a platform where they can do cross analysis and also have data at all levels for decision making. This is a way to empower everyone at every level in the school information system. Thank you very much.
Lovely. And now we're staying on the continent, becoming to the right and further down. Stefanino, who heads up the amazing work done by his Mozambique or DHIS2. Maybe you can share with us what DHIS2 actually means. Thank you, Zeferino.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zeferino Saugen from East Mozambique, or Saúde Digital, or Digital Health, so in Portuguese. Yes, so we're going to share a bit of what we are doing. So Digital or East Mozambique has been involved on the DHIS community or DHIS2 platform implementation in health and WASH for a couple of years. So what leveraging from that expertise that you have been developing in the country, and also supporting the different countries in the Lusophone community, we started engaging with the other countries that are in the process of adopting the DHIS2 platform as a tool that can be used to manage the education data. So we started with the pilot process. As Jer has mentioned, and other Pamod mentioned, the process in the country, they do have platforms. So having the data, education data in the DHIS2 usually start with doing this understanding what the country is using. So we did not do a different thing. We went to understand how the education information is working by doing the assessment of the information. And this process started with importing the data that already existed after doing the customization or identification or development of the master education or school list, and having that information imported into DHIS2, started developing some dashboards that were presented, shared at the national level. But there are several dynamics that happened in the countries, especially in Mozambique. So we had to the primary objective of this platform is to support the lower levels. So we decided to move to the provinces and the districts to make sure that we work closely with the end users, so that their information can be integrated, and then we can learn on their challenges and see how the digital platform could be used to address some of these challenges. So As part of that, we had to go to the start piloting in one of the province, in the district of Zambezia province. And also after doing this piloting, we identified there are several other partners that are working in the provinces. So, and some of the partners that they do have the project was is called She Belongs in School or to School. We started supporting this project, which aims to address several issues, but targeting adolescent girls from 9 to 19 years old. So after or in the process of doing this customization or engagement of this, we did also have some in the pilot sites did provide tablets and internet that is used regularly to report the data, and also we did have several meetings, discussions with the education stakeholders, presenting the platform, learning from what they are doing. It was also through those that we identified these partners that are working on She Belongs to School project. And at the moment now we are working with this partner to expand the platform, and then to expand the platform to cover other provinces. In this case, this is from Nampula and the Niassa province. They will be there at the moment engaged in addressing some of these their issues using the DHIS platform. There are activities also related to the expanding from the aggregates to the individual level data. We are developing some additional features that can support the day-to-day use of the different education managers. For example, the teachers, they can register the information related to attendance or effectiveness. Students' attendance also can be registered by teachers. There are information related to supervision data that was requested that we are adding, so that whenever there is a supervision in the school, this information can be entered in the platform. Next time they go there, they can retrieve that information and then see what are the action that were defined previously, and then see whether the actions are being implemented or not. And also, as it was mentioned by Jerry, there are information indicators that are necessary, that are needed, that need human resource data. We are also in the process of integrating part of this information into the platform, so that they can use it on day-to-day management of the schools. That's what I have to share as related to the Mozambique experience on the MES pilot. Thank you.
Great. And then very, very excited to welcome Monica Mua, who is not only working for HIST Uganda, but also as a PhD student with us. There you go.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, so from West Africa to Asia to South Africa, now to the Pearl of Africa, Uganda, DHIS2 for education. So basically, just give you a snapshot of what we have done in Uganda so far. And for us in Uganda, unlike CD, who is shifting from central level down to school level, in Uganda, we are going up to district level. So we are decentralizing at district level. And so this started in 2019. And what were we able to do? We've been able to build the capacity for the national level team to be able to support the district to enter their data, to analyze it. And now when we move to the district level, we also built the capacity for the district teams to be able to now start analyzing their data and also using their data at that level. So our focus really is bringing back the district into the data management process. Previously, it was being done at central level, where all the data is collected from schools. It's just endorsed by the district team and then goes to the central level, where it's entered into a manually into an access database. But now we are trying to see how do we bring back the district into the data management process. So we've really tried to build capacity of the national level and the district level teams to be able to do that. And then, of course, as we scaled to the district level, we tried to empower the districts and equip them with infrastructure, the laptops, the internet, to be able now to use this data, go into the system and extract this data to inform their planning at district level. And so you find that the internet even has been shared even beyond the education sector to be used by other sectors at district level. It's used for sending emails, used for the health sector is also sharing the internet. So we have shared resources at that level. And of course, the district now is able to provide the support supervision in visualizing its data. It's able now to provide targeted support supervision to the school level, so that all the issues are highlighted, and then the district teams, especially the education teams, are ready to provide that support to school level. Then of course, during our implementation, it was very important that we continuously document the best practices. So with engagement with the district teams, with engagement with the school level administrators, we're able to understand what is the process of the data collection, how do they want their data presented, and we've been able to document that, and that has been input in as the requirements, in part of the requirements for the ongoing improvement of the COA. And then also in Uganda, what we did following our implementation, we are right now in 4 districts in Uganda. We've been able to document the cost, what it takes to scale at national level. And this is an advocacy tool that we are reaching out to partners to support the scale to the entire country. So that implementation costing has really been key to support that. Yeah, so plans moving forward, of course, since we are not yet scaled to the national level, to all the districts in the country, we are continuously engaging with various partners to really come up and support the national scale. And of course, we have different education partners in Uganda, and each are supporting different regions in different districts. So want to see how do we harmonize these partners, how do we harmonize their reporting requirements, so that we have standard tools, standard reporting tools, and all these tools now we use DHIS2 to report, to capture data from these tools, and then all that is being used by both the ministry and also the development partners. Then we are really trying to establish DHIS2 as a central data repository. Here we want learning from health, really. We want to see how can DHIS2 now integrate various data from other systems and also other sectors. So we are trying to see how do we merge data from, let's say, the use DHIS2 to really be the central repository, and also have the standard school facility list where all this is into one system. And then the other thing we are trying to do is continuously provide capacity across all levels. And here we are trying to integrate the various DHIS2 trainings, have these DHIS2 trainings, both having the health team. Here in Uganda, we have the district biostatisticians that are really conversant in using DHIS2. They've been using it for over 10 years. So we are having integrated trainings where they participate in the education DHIS2 training, so that they can share information, they can share knowledge and learn, and there is really cross-sector learning from the different teams. Then the other thing, of course, we want to see all the data can't be in one system. And so we are trying to see how do we bring different data from different sectors. And also in education, we have data coming in from the examination board, finance data from the Ministry of Finance, HR data. So we are trying to see how do we integrate all this data to help us calculate the key performance indicators that inform planning. Then, of course, from all this, we are trying to see how do we document and improve on the development of the COA IMIS metadata package. Then now those are the plans that we have done in Uganda, and I'll briefly maybe share about Eswatini. For Eswatini, we are implementing it in Eswatini, that is Swaziland, with support in partnership with University of Oslo, as well as this is being funded by UNICEF Eswatini, and that's the education sector of UNICEF. So what is happening in Eswatini, that in Eswatini really previously, I think like all the other IMI structures across the countries, the African countries, we are collecting various data on school information, the location, the ownership. Then we have student data and staff data. But previously the learner data in Eswatini was being collected based on serial numbers. But then they had a shift that we want to collect our data in terms of a PIN, that this is the unique identification number that is given right from birth to these learners, and everyone else in Eswatini actually has that PIN. So it is a unique identifier. So they saw that they wanted to shift just from the routine IMIS data into now a PIN-driven model. And that's really what has motivated them. And all the other data is being entered into the system, and this was still access-based, still centrally controlled like in Uganda. So the story has been really the same, I think, for most of these African countries. So what has come in is that we've been able to really customize the system. For Eswatini, together with the UIO team, we've been able to come in and configure the DHIS2 to capture now their data needs based on their new tools. The tools were revised. And all this, just to notice that this has been done during the COVID period. So you find that most of the work has been remote, but with the beauty of the community and the support, I think it can go beyond, you can see that it's beyond boundaries, and we don't have to be physically there to support the team. So most of the work was remote, but then after that, we went there and did some trainings, and they are capturing both the individual level data as well as aggregate data. So, so now they piloted that system in 100 schools, in 100 schools in one region, Manzini region. And basically stories and learnings from that has really shown the enthusiasm and passion with which they have to adopt DHIS2 for education. I think last week, but one were there with Sophia to really assess the project's implementation. And I think from the workshop we had from the PS, the directors, different directors of the ministry, and all stakeholders, including partners, really present, and they were really, really interested and passionate. Everyone we talked to from central level down to school level was really passionate and excited about the ability of the system to really change their data management and decision-making at different levels. So we are really seeing very good use cases at all levels. I think at one school that we visited, that one of the teachers was very passionate and is like, give me the system and see what I can do with it. So she's like, just from the system, I can now see which offices are in my school, and I can be able to support them accordingly. So that data use at that level is really critical. The PS was really excited to see how this system is now going to support them to distribute financial grants to school. So with partners now on board, all partners are buying into this, and there was really a lot of desire to support scale. And so UNICEF, led by UNICEF, I think, and the ministry, they want to see how do we mobilize resources to support this scale. And of course, there are opportunities for integration and collaboration with various partners in Eswatini, with various sectors, the Ministry of Home Affairs that is responsible for birth registration, and also the Ministry of Finance. So there is inter-sectoral collaboration that is taking place, and I think the opportunities are great, really, to learn from Eswatini. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see we have one question in the room, so maybe we can take that.
Can I ask you a question? The story of Eswatini is fantastic. I want to know, do you think it will have an impact on the Ministry of Health?
We have the Ministry of Education online here as well.
Do you think the Ministry of Health will be more open to DHIS2 as they've seen that in education it has been so successful?
Yes, I think the Ministry of Health will be very open to embracing DHIS2. Why? Because we are using, UNICEF is supporting, and UNICEF is cross-sectoral, both in health and education. And in one of the meetings, the health team from UNICEF was also present, and they are excited about that. And actually, they are implementing a DHIS2 system, but it's not called DHIS2. I think it was another name, and everyone thought it wasn't DHIS2. But then when we went to the central level to meet the UNICEF team, they were surprised. And
it's not account management.
Yeah,
that's not DHIS2.
There is another one, tracking mothers and tracking mothers.
Yeah, that's just the community one, but no, DHIS2 is not used for aggregated data.
No, it's not. It was being piloted. Yes. So I think the enthusiasm is there, and we hope that they will.
That's wonderful. That's really, really
So just to respond, yes, we are supporting the Ministry of Health on the malaria program, the malaria elimination. So we started in the last they're using DHIS2. We started in October, November. So in the process, we have a regular meeting with them together with WHO.
So it's infiltrating everywhere.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much for that, and hope everyone can hear us online there. Please do let us know in the chat if you're not able to hear any of the questions, and we can share them with you. Okay, great. So I think before we take any more questions, we'll definitely jump to that in the couple next presentations. But we'd just like to introduce a very special guest. His name is Patrick Monioridis. I hope I've gotten your surname correct, Patrick. He is from the Global Education Monitoring Report team. He's the Senior Project Officer and Spotlight Technical Lead. And I think we're really excited to have, I know we have a lot of health folks in the room here and online, but I do see some education faces. And I think something that the education sector has really been looking up to over years and years is what comes out in the Global Education Monitoring Report. It really is our guiding light in terms of how is the education sector doing? Are we being accountable to the commitments that we've made? And we're actually quite excited that the Global Education Monitoring Report is celebrating its 20th year. So us as education team cannot wait for different topics to come out. And we're just really, really appreciative, Patrick, that you could join us today and share a little bit more about the work that you're doing and the importance of EMIS in meeting the commitments that we've all made. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
That's Sophia's problem here. We can see your screen, but we can also see your notes.
So that's the wrong screen. Let me see if I can shift that. How would that work? Sorry, I will just stop sharing for now.
No problem.
Just put the presentation mode.
Yeah.
It was presentation mode, yes. Let me just try it again now.
I think top left, there might be an option.
Okay, so what do you see now?
But,
the
put
full
on
presentation
mode, and then I think it will be fine. Click the
No,
up there at
sorry, because I have 3 screens, so I am in presentation mode on one of my screens, but not on the right screen.
Right.
Let me just try another window for the sharing. I think I got it now. Should be good now. Let's see.
We're seeing your. There we go. Yes.
All right. Excellent.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry for that little hiccup. It's very appropriate for someone who's going to talk about technology. So thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to address such an exciting crowd. We are really delighted to be here, even if remotely, as we are enthusiastic fans of the DHIS project. And we are very happy to see the direction that the project has taken in recent years, notably by expanding to the area of education. Apology for not being able to be here in person today. We have our advisory board this week, and as made traveling rather impossible. I'm Patrick Monjoides. I'm Senior Project Officer with the GEM report and technical lead on the Spotlight series, which I will also be addressing today. And I'll be talking about the importance of EMIS in the work that we are doing and in relation to the upcoming reports that the GEM report team is currently working on. Sorry, let me just see. So today I'll address 3 aspects that we think could be relevant for your upcoming discussions, but also to signal where your inputs into our work could be very welcome. First, I'll give a brief introduction of the GEM report and why the work on EMIS is so important to us. This will be the equivalent of a user story for those who have worked in apps development, where I hope to raise awareness on some of the specifications of EMIS that are becoming increasingly important, and notably the ability to respond to a wide range of demand coming from internal and external users. Then I will present our ongoing consultation on the 2023 report, which focuses on the nexus between technology and education, and for which we very much welcome your inputs, suggestions, and experiences. And lastly, I will highlight key issues that pertain to our most recent regional report series, the Spotlight series, and the specific data challenges that we are facing in using data to improve foundational learning in Africa. So before going into the topic, let me introduce you the GEM report briefly. The GEM has the official mandate to monitor progress towards internationally agreed upon goals and objectives that pertain to education. We are an editorially independent team at UNESCO since 2002. And as mentioned, we are celebrating our 20th anniversary. It's been a good ride so far. And we received our mandate directly from the 2015 Incheon Declaration that was endorsed by all countries at the onset of the SDG4 agenda. There are 2 main parts in our work. The first one is to provide a regular monitoring of official education indicators that have been agreed upon as part of the International Education Monitoring Framework. And the second part is to address specific thematic focuses that are relevant for education policies that aim to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 4. This thematic aspect basically drive the title and the focus of the report for every cycle. For instance, in 2017, we looked at the issue of accountability. In 2019, we looked at migration and displacement, and the current GEM report currently looks at the role of non-state actors. As I mentioned, the 2023 GEM report will focus on education and technology, and the 2024 report will be on leadership in education. In addition, we have developed a number of products over the years, over these 20 years, that have become increasingly central for many actors who engage with the international and regional education agenda. This includes 4 web applications that look at different aspects of global education progress and policies. So for instance, you have WIDE that looks into educational inequalities, which actually I created some years ago. Then you have Scope that provides data analysis of the most recent trends towards achieving the SDG4. You have View that proposes estimates and projection for completion rate and out of school rates for the world. And you also have apps that use textual data like Peer that shares policy information for each country in the form of systematic country profiles, to which we'll be adding a section on the use of technology. And lastly, but not least, we also produce more contextualized research with regional reports, agenda report, use version of the GEM report, and policy papers. What's important for us today is really to highlight how dependent we are on the quality of others' work, where basically all the products that I've just presented would not exist if it wasn't for the quality of existing data collections. There are different levels of the monitoring, and we are basically at the far end of the global data chain. Each level monitors education for a different purpose. Our work consists of giving visibility to education issues, track international and regional progress, hold countries and donors accountable to their commitment, flag global issues, and help coordinate global efforts. This is very different, obviously, from the initial purpose of EMIS, which are usually designed for evidence-based national policies, to inform daily management and governance of education systems, and to optimize the use of national resources. And EMIS themselves are different from school management systems, for instance, which are often used to respond to EMIS data collection, sometimes not as part of the EMIS system, sometimes independent of the EMIS system. So what this highlights is something that has been mentioned already a couple of times, is the critical importance of interoperability and the ability of systems to adapt. So data systems are embedded in a global data chain that generates specific needs for national users as they have to face a multiplicity of demands. national teams, as we've heard already, are often overburdened. From experience working with different teams in different countries and regions, you can find teams of 1 to 2 persons that have the responsibility of responding to all requests. So that can include national demand, for instance, for parliamentary discussions, demand from regional organizations, from international data collection, from donors and development partners, in addition to their daily work, which is to produce their routine monitoring of their education systems, like an annual digest or daily monitoring data. So systems that enable the users to respond to their local needs, but also to the external demand that are increasingly putting pressure on them and come in various forms and formats are extremely important. For instance, you will have national users who will have requests for new indicators or new types of data collections, or produce custom-made extract that departs from the initial setup of the software. And I think that's also why we are quite excited by DHIS, as it feels that some of these issues have been taken into consideration from the onset. Just to provide a quick snapshot into the role of EMIS in international monitoring, this could be a schematic representation of the data ecosystem that exists at the international, up to the international level. And EMIS are basically part of these primary data sources. They are designed and defined for specific needs at the onset, but they make their way into the international chain through applying international standard classification like ISCAID, using different sources of data for population, and using international methodology for indicators. And they might, so this would constitute the primary international data sources, for instance, the data of the DHIS that we use in our daily monitoring. But these indicators themselves are also used in secondary international data sources, like WIDE that I presented, but also the World Bank website, or other types of websites that are basically further leveraging the analytical potential of data and indicators. If I were to summarize how important EMIS data is at the international level, I would basically say that it constitutes between 50 and 60% of all indicators that are reported at the international level. So this is data from the DHIS that shows you how connected EMIS data, so administrative data in this situation here, how connected they are to the different targets. And the EMIS data are connected to at least 5 targets: the one on access and completion of basic education, early childhood education, equity, sustainable education, and teachers, of course. There are many instances of successful use of EMIS data as systems have tremendously improved over years. For instance, this is extracted from SCOPE that I presented earlier and illustrate progress towards gender parity over time in low, middle, and high income countries. There is currently enough data worldwide to have accurate estimates of gender parity indices at all levels in participation. So this data shows how most countries have managed to improve gender parity, yet significant challenges remain for low and lower middle income countries, and different challenges exist with upper middle and high income countries where now girls are actually outperforming boys substantially. Sometimes there is not enough data to produce group averages, but you can still get a reasonable picture of the situation. This shows the proportion of schools with sanitation facilities in more than 100 countries, and highlights how what we take for granted in Europe, for instance, remains rare in many countries, with countries like Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, and Chad, the one that are further to the left, having less than 20% of their primary schools with sanitation facilities. However, many challenges remain with regard to monitoring, as a substantial part of the SDG 4 agenda remains poorly monitored. As a community overall, we have done fairly well with data on enrollment and maybe teachers to some extent, but the further we are looking into having a comprehensive understanding of education, the more we see that a number of areas remain severely neglected. And the SDG 4 agenda, as well as the new regional agenda, or like the CESA agenda, for instance, represent an unprecedented demand for education data and a much broader and more complex measurement agenda than ever. In particular, the two key focuses that are equity and learning make the demand for education data more pressing on disaggregation and non-traditional data collections, which makes it really difficult for countries to adapt to this rapidly evolving demand. In terms of coverage, overall, only 7 out of the 43 indicators that are part of the official list of indicators for the thematic monitoring of SDG 4 have only 7 out of 43 have available data for 3/4 or more of the countries. But there are at least half of the indicators for which only a quarter or less of the countries have available data. And these challenges are also reflected in the quality of monitoring and reporting against regional frameworks such as CESA, which often overlap substantially with the SDG 4 framework. And as highlighted in the legend of the table here, on the top left table, it doesn't mean that data does not exist always. Data can exist, but it is also about having quality data, with a sufficient coverage also and accessible in usable format. You still find a lot of data that is stored maybe in PDF format or shared in PDF format or stored on one computer. I had myself the experience once of going to a country where the computer where all the EMIS data was stored, it was in a small country in the Pacific, fell and all the data was lost as part of this. And there are many monitoring challenges that remain. We are trying to measure universal education value and objective through natural system data are of varying strengths. You have emerging data system versus advanced data system. You have the political nature of the data. In some cases data exist, but are not shared for different reasons. You have this issue of increasing conflict and crisis situation. I was really happy to hear about the possibility of urgent deployment, the work that Sri Lanka is doing on urgent deployment of DHIS. And you also have this critical issue of this doubly excluded population, where you have populations that are already excluded in the society in general. They are marginalized for different reasons, but they are also often excluded as part of our monitoring systems, receiving then a double sanction. So now I will talk a little bit about the 2023 report, which tries to address some of these challenges. Currently, we are at the consultation stage. That is why we are particularly keen on being here today, as your inputs are very important to us. COVID has highlighted the importance of technology in ensuring education delivery, including during crisis and emergency situations. But it has also stressed how an education that relies primarily on technology can be detrimental to equity and fairness in education. Children from the poorest households may not own a radio or a TV, not even mentioning a laptop. They can be in very crowded households and with parents that may not be able to support them, to provide them with the same amount of support. So the recognition for the 2023 report is that technology helps with education and the SDG 4, but it is not a magic wand and that it requires a comprehensive approach. We have 3 key focuses as part of this initial approach to technology and education. The first one is to explore opportunities where education challenges have been tackled thanks to technology. This can be in system management, and we've seen excellent example today. It can be around pupils learning, teacher training, or resource allocation. The second focus is about what are the minimum conditions that are required to support learning. Access to technology. How can education system ensure that all learners have access to technology? Governance and regulation. How can education system protect learners from the risk of technology? Teacher preparation. How can education system support all teachers to teach, use, and deal with technology effectively? And lastly, we will also focus on technologies that are outside of ICTs. For instance, the monitoring of SDG 4 target, SDG target 4.A on education facilities and learning environment will examine construction and energy technologies that can improve conditions for learners, including solar panels and other renewable energies that can increase access to technology. Models that can reduce disaster risk for buildings, construction materials that make school more appropriate for learning and reduce energy footprint, as well as water and sanitation technology that improve learners' daily lives. One of the main challenges we have with the 2023 GEM report is to write this user story of what is the education we want and to engage with how technology can support this vision. This means looking into issues of access and inclusion, how to reach those that have been left aside to date, providing access to quality content at reasonable cost, but also quality, how to support and improve pedagogy, leading up to better student learning, but also how to provide users with the new skills that are required by the use of technology. When you bring technology into the classroom, for instance, it can introduce competition even with the teachers. And of course, we'll engage substantially with technology and system management, how to make education data system more relevant and more widely used, and that's pertains in particular to the discussion we have today. So the 2023 will put specific effort into this issue and look into issues that pertains to data collection and analysis to improve decision and practices, and that includes a number of aspects. For instance, how we can have faster payment of teacher salaries through mobile money, how to build maintenance and resource allocation, planning through GIS data, EMIS data collection that could be verified through mobile data, how to better link the different system, payroll data and teacher management and so on. There will be a strong focus on learning achievement, as there have also been a lot of progress in this area. And last but not least, we will also be addressing sometimes sensitive issues of proprietary technologies versus making technology a support for, to all, which is also why we are really keen on the DHIS project. One region where there are specific challenges in Africa, where it is also more difficult to leverage technology, is actually Africa. So this is one of the reasons why behind the Spotlight series. In Africa, there's this double challenge of lower educational achievement and lower levels of infrastructure development. You might not have power grid everywhere. You might not have the same internet penetration, and you have also lower levels of ownership of technological device. And this is to put against the current situation in education, where 1 in 5 primary school age children are out of school, 1 in 3 do not complete primary school by age 15. And for those who complete, only 1 in 5 actually reach proficiency in reading and mathematics. The project is a partnership between the GEM report and ADEWA, and it will be 3 cycles of 1 year. For each cycle, we will cover about 12 countries. Among these 12 countries, we will look at 5 countries in depth, and we will publish 5 country reports and 1 continental report. This will fit into a peer learning mechanism at the African Union level, engaging with the STC. And for the current cycle, the 2022 cycle, we have Senegal and Ghana in the West. We could not secure anybody in North Africa. We have DR Congo for Central Africa, Rwanda for East Africa, and Mozambique in the South. For the next cycle, so we are currently discussing with the countries. Most of them actually have already confirmed their participation. We have Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, Angola, Zambia, and South Africa. So this will be my last slide. This is just to let you know that we have this analytical framework that we're using, and this framework has 7 dimensions, all pertaining to education policies that focus on improving foundational learning. I won't go into detail for every dimension, but we'll highlight 3 that are of particular importance for the discussions today. The first one is teachers and how EMIS data and other education data can help in their daily practice. The teacher dimension for the Spotlight series is about how well teachers are supported and trained, but also on their allocation across the territory, as we often see a disconnect between allocation of teachers and the need of the children. The second dimension is school management and budget. Having a clear understanding of resource management and how to optimize it is even more critical in low resource environment. And lastly, the third dimension that might be of interest today is that of quality of assurance and supervision. And we've heard already a lot about supervision, where many countries in Africa have actually started to use dashboards and real-time information to inform supportive and formative supervision, rather than supervision that is meant to sanction of teachers and ed teachers, and to improve their pedagogical practice, which we think is really important. Just to conclude, this is a call for inputs and contributions from you. You can reach out at any time. Basically, if you want to participate into the online consultation, you can go on this page, or you can reach out to me. My address will come in the next slide. We are really keen on hearing on your experiences. You should also be lookout, if you're interested in the use of technology in your country, you should look out for the new peer country profile that will come on the website. And for the Spotlight series, of course, we are really keen on hearing about projects in the participating countries for the 2023 round. I remind them here: Angola, Mauritania, Niger, South Africa. So we heard about Uganda already, and Zambia. and of course, studies that look into the use of data systems to improve access, completion, and learning in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Food for thought and also lots of opportunities. So thank you so much for joining. I wonder if there's any questions we can field, maybe one or two. If there's any questions from online or from the room. Yes, Tadia.
I have one on the reliability of EMIS.
Patrick, are you able to hear?
Yes, I can hear on the reliability of EMIS.
Yes, because you mentioned that it's a large chunk of the data we have globally, 50–60%, but of course you also go into missing data and you mentioned data quality issues. So if you can say something about reliability of EMIS data vis-a-vis other sources and what you potentially do to kind of benchmark or validate EMIS data so you feel some confidence around using it.
So here I can talk maybe from experience. So before joining the GEM report, I actually worked for the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. And most of the data that is provided to the UNESCO Institute for Statistics actually comes from EMIS data. And people often wonder about whether countries can massage the data and produce specific indicators. But what the US does is that they collect raw data, they don't collect indicators. And because they have time series and they have triangulation possibilities with household surveys or census data, they are able to actually check on the robustness and the internal consistency of the data. And surprisingly, the data that comes from EMIS are particularly reliable and robust in terms of the raw count. So you have very few cases where you have like unexplainable outliers or where you have specific issues that you're just wondering whether this data has been massaged to reflect something different. So I would say that if all actors in the chain, and that includes sometimes even the teachers who are meant to fill in the forms, or then the local officers who are meant to report at the more centralized level. If all actors are trained and informed, I think the data has proven to be particularly reliable.
Thank you. Okay, I don't think there's any more questions in the room. I don't see any online from anyone.
Yeah, very short.
Yeah. Great. So thank you again very much, Patrick. Then we're moving into the final half of our presentations, and we have Prosper, who will be talking to us about learning from health and adopting in education, specifically looking at the school-based COVID surveillance that has been ongoing in Uganda. So Prosper, if I can share your screen for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I thought I was going to come after the break, but let's try to do this quickly. Yeah, so we have a small use case here, which again is also as a result of COVID, and also our long-term engagement of working with DHIS2. So first of all, we congratulate ourselves as Uganda, 10 years of DHIS2 implementation. But particularly also 10 years of implementing DHIS2 based disease surveillance using SMSs, Android, tracker, a combination of everything within the DHIS2. So why we went for this, and I think this is basically connecting also to what Monica shared from Uganda, was really trying to look at the investments that are already on the ground and the investments globally, and also the work that was ongoing during the COVID pandemic to be able to do that. So we do look at, of course, as I shared, the 10 years of disease surveillance implementation in Uganda, right from the community and the health facilities. And here we're also talking about the community, which is in the schools are in the community, and also the schools which are in the nearby the health facilities. So basically the same structure. So we also look at the decentralization nature of the services in Uganda. that the district plays a key role in this management of data. And so we were looking at the district education team and the health team sitting together and working together during the pandemic also to be able to use that capacity to do this. Again, the synergies across, there were so many, as we shared during the general implementation of DHIS2 for education. The structures I did mention about where the schools are near to the hospital, the health facility, to the hospital, and are working together. And then also what came into during the COVID pandemic, there were so many technical working groups, so many teams under the district and the school level. These teams were very key, and they had to be health and education. And lastly, looking at the innovations that we have in education, particularly the ones that we have been able to deploy in Uganda, like real-time and visualization of data, and as I will share, and how it has been able to plug into education and use without incurring a lot of costs, just plug and play and move on. So yeah, so again, this is again to justify why we really went in for this. And particularly it was just because of resources. We didn't have a lot of resources to be able to scale to schools easily, and we had to really rely basically on the education. So data management and use. At the district level, we see the health. We see the health structure has been built over 10 years. They know how to use the DHIS2. They know how to use the data, particularly for disease surveillance. And so that is what was really key in us trying to bring the education team nearer in terms of the disease surveillance. The capacity has been there, so we didn't have to train the whole entire counter ourselves. You just tell the district team, please partner with the disease surveillance person, education inspector, and make sure that we are able to manage the data. Then harmonization of partners is what also is very key, which is not a big deal in education. So looking at using the harmonized structures, partners who are in health and education, UNICEF has already mentioned in Eswatini. I think it's almost the same everywhere. How can the partners work and support the education? And lastly, of course, the capacity of the teams in here. So and here we see some of the partner of the players, the key players, like the planner. The planner was being asked to plan for both health and education. So when it came to education, in terms of planning for the opening, whatever is needed in schools, it basically was lacking a lot of that. And partnering these people together was really a very key for the success of this. So what have we done? Or have we done in terms of trying to get this for school surveillance, but also for the general implementation of the DHIS2? So one of the areas, of course, we've been able to do is look at the capacity that has been from right to the global, to the national, to the district, to even the lower facilities, to use all those resources to be able to train quickly the education sector team and be able to do that. So this is one of the workshops where capacity was being built on how to configure, how to do analysis. And this is where the health and the education teams were all sitting together and helping each other, because whenever we're inviting the trainings, we'd bring somebody from the health with an expert in DHIS2, and then the from education, put them together and train them and task them to be able to lead the implementation. Then there came into now the disease surveillance, and I mean, COVID did not spare school. In fact, schools, in fact, it wasn't the schools. And so we were looking to see how we'll open, how we get the learners back to the school. And already in health facilities did not close. They continued running, and people kept coming to the health facilities, but schools closed. And now in opening, you needed a school surveillance system within the education sector to be able to monitor the suspects and the referrals for testing, and those who are tested, isolation and all that. So we built on just changing the short code, which is SBS, from CBS, which was the case-based whatever reporting on the other side. And we were able to repurpose this short code, SMS reporting, daily reporting, of how many learners you have been able to screen, how many had signs symptoms, how many were filed for testing, how many tested positive, how many do you have isolated in your school? And so we use the health platform, which is the SMS short code. So education did not incur any cost. They are not incurring any cost. Health is paying for that short code, and they are able to report directly from this. It's a toll free, and also it allows for anonymous reporting, which is the alerts and rumors. So they could also be able to, they are also able to send this to the health to the DHIS for education, and then we have been able to link that to the health, and so you have the data from education to health, so the two departments can be able to see the data. Then integration, this is basically what I've talked about. We were able to integrate data from education. Of course, again, learning from education that we needed population data to be able to calculate some of the indicators, the targets, and all that. The exam is on another side. But particularly for immunization and surveillance data, we were able to pull data from the DHIS for education to the health surveillance so that we can be able to see the data across. And that dashboard that you see there, very familiar. It's been presented almost, not in this format, but been presented over like 3 years. First, it was measles and rubella campaign. So that's an app which was developed for that purpose. Then we moved it and took it, the same app, to COVID surveillance in health. And we had the same, same visuals. And now it's being used for education to also monitor school-based surveillance, so that the innovation that were in health would be easily plugged into, and that's now you can see how it's been very easy to implement. Then lastly, of course, with all this, we've been able to use our skills and all that to be able to plan for this scale. And I think this surveillance is not going to stop with COVID. It's going to expand to other areas, of disease surveillance. So we are now having health facility surveillance, and then school-based surveillance, community, all combined and all coming together here. And I think lastly, yeah, that is actually basically talking about this, and that very particular real-time app that has been developed and used, through 3 implementations, and now in education. And then there is also another app that we also developed, which is a data import wizard that allows you to be able to synchronize data. That's what basically we've been able to use to push data from the education system to the health system to be able to do that. And also vice versa for the vaccination, because also the education wants to know how many people are vaccinated on their side. So also pushes back data to the other side. And lastly, this is the whole implementation of school surveillance. So we had 6 parameters that we selected to be able to be reported from the school. And basically looking at the screening, the referrals for testing, and the test positive, the testing at the school or nearby. And actually the facilities were all linked to health. The schools were all linked to health facilities to be able to have a quick testing whenever learners were identified. So you have a team down there of teachers trying to send their reports like they do in the health facilities. And that would also give them immediate feedback, and also feedback to the district and also to the national team. And data also output in these different media. One was a public portal where the education surveillance data was posted. This is exactly the similar presentation of the health data for the COVID surveillance. So even the colors are the same. So just also to be able to learn from there and be able to apply here. Lastly, of course, the app that we talked about, which is really real-time monitoring how many cases are coming out of the field, has also been plugged in here for immediate feedback and actioning. Then also the dashboards on the smartphone are being put there. So with that, this is basically what we've been able to do and try to be able to learn from health. And last also to look at the learning from health to education. The IPED or African Union team has shared their plan to go to the DHIS2 for education. the idea of the demo that is behind there is also from the surveillance that is run by Africa CDC. So it was almost taking the same platform for disease surveillance now to be able to use it for the DHIS for education. The last slide here is basically talking about other benefits that we've been able to do as a result of this, trying to be able to routinarize the data collection within the education sector that also involves in some health, and also being able to have some more programs come on board with this kind of success. And lastly, being able to work with the team to be able to maintain a DHIS2 for education that you can now be able to plug in whatever data requirements they bring on board. So thank you very much. And I think that's basically what we can be able to share on.
Thank you so much. We have some comments just saying very interesting about the school-based surveillance, need to learn more about education RTM system. And I think something that is really fantastic with the Ugandan team is that we've done a lot of documentation. So if you go onto the community of practice, if you go onto the website, you can also find small snippets of data use cases and a little bit more information. And you can always start the conversation going there as well to ask more questions. So we're moving into our final couple of presentations. We are absolutely honored to have the UNICEF headquarters team with us here in Oslo. We really, really appreciate your coming. And up first, we have Suguru, who's going to present a bit about Mix Eagle. So if I can welcome you, Suguru, I'll get your presentation up and running. There we go. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. And it's been a long day and a long session with 2 hours. We got great. I try not to bore you and make it exciting and as short as possible. So my name is Suguru. Came from UNICEF New York headquarters. I'm the senior advisor for monitoring and statistics in education, chief of education data unit of UNICEF. So with this 15 minutes, I'm going to talk about Mix Eagle, which is based on primary on the household survey data. But I will explain why this is important when we come together today to talk about DHIS2 and MES. And okay. So essentially the idea of Mix Eagle came from the idea that we have a lot of data, but we don't have a lot of data. We have some missing data, but we do have a lot of data. Now, even if we have data, are we using data? Probably not. So let's try to address both data availability and data use. That's the starting kind of point of Mix Eagle. And we've been working in 30 countries so far, trying to work with the Ministry of Education, National Statistics Offices, and education partners on the ground. And when we analyze household survey data, which is Mix 6, we mainly focus on 8 topics: access, completion, learning outcomes, disability, ECE, ECD, early childhood development, remote learning, which is added because of the COVID, so the school closures. Now, this is just an example of data visualization. So when you analyze data, like you are a data producer, right? And then you publish your data and you think your job is done. But for the data really users, the Ministry of Education, they need a little bit more further analysis, advanced more analysis to address the research education policy questions. So we try to unpack as much as possible for them to easily use the data. And then here you are seeing on your left-hand side, you are seeing different indicators, and which is produced by Mix 6 survey. And the numbers here are represent SDG4 global indicator number. For example, attendance is the 4.1 and 4.22, which is for the pre-primary school student. And then you can calculate all sorts of different kind of indicators: repetition, dropout, non-transition. I will differentiate dropout within education cycle and the dropout from primary to lower secondary. For example, I would differentiate. So I would say the non-transition rates. And completion rates, learning outcomes, and the foundational learning outcomes were mentioned by James' colleague as well. It's critical skills. Children learn how to read first, then they will learn by reading, right? So if you don't have skills to read, actually they cannot learn in the future. So foundational learning is super important. ICT skills is very important for today's world. And then the literacy ECD index, so that's a comprehensive measurement of child development and access to internet. These are indicators you can get from the household survey. And on your right-hand side, you are seeing different types of disaggregation, age, sex, location. These are disaggregators you could have from the MS government system, but then from there, starting from socioeconomic status, the admin data system tend not to have full information. And the household wealth, the mother's education, which is key for education, key predictor for child education outcomes, subnational areas in and out of school children, because the admin system is not able to capture very often the out of school populations, home language and language of instruction. Do they match or do they not match? Disability status of children, child labor status, parental involvement education, how much parents are supporting children at home. We wouldn't know from any data, right? And the number of books at home, because there is a very clear correlation between number of reading materials at home and child learning outcomes. It's important, but you wouldn't get it. And the parent view of child disability. This is very interesting, indicator, like how parents conceive physical punishment is acceptable, to what extent it's acceptable. And you will see a wide variation of the parenting and child marriage. So these are types of indicators and possible disaggregation. And you can guess why these disaggregations are important for education, because they are, the learning outcomes would be very different from, for example, the children whose mother is not educated and the children whose mother is highly educated, even they are from the poor household. You will see very different results. And so that's a power of a household survey that helps you to disaggregate education data. And this is just an example of like once you have the household social economic data, you can further unpack the education indicator you calculate. So you are seeing this is the learning outcomes, reading, foundational reading outcomes of different countries. And you are seeing in the middle, you are seeing the national average, and you are seeing the averages for the rich and poor household, right? So when you are, let's say, on average, 50% of children in your country being able to read, but there is a huge gap between the rich and poor kids, right? So having that information is important for the Ministry of Education because it indicates who is failing to learn. And also, it indicates that what are the priority for your country to achieve SDG 4, right? Okay, so once you have, for example, the information about children and disabilities, you can disaggregate data. So these are average the share of children with disabilities with foundational reading skills, and when you compare with the children without, of course, the share is much lower, which is expected, but you can quantify by having that information. Right, and then here you are seeing on your left-hand side, you are seeing the reading outcomes for girls and boys. And then for your right-hand side, you are seeing the result for mathematics. And then for your reading, you are seeing a lot of red and orange or the pink bars, meaning girls are advantaged. So girls are learning better than boys. For the math, it's not mixed, right? So then it's quite useful to have the learning outcome data, which is not very often available in the education system. But once you have the household survey data, you can monitor the learning outcomes, then you can compare boys and girls. And therefore, this is quite common for like education, like data people, like because you will see the same pattern, whether you unpack PISA data or you unpack PASEC data, you always see girls are learning better than boys, right? But it's from the national system, it's hard to identify that fact. And then, so I've been talking about the advantage of a household survey data on your left-hand side up, and but additional advantage is that the household survey data result can be compared across countries and across time. because the modules are developed in such a way. So it's being tested and improved in different cities. So it's meant to collect data to compare across countries. So that means that you have a really good tool to collect data. Right? And then the second one is the disaggregation ability, because you have a lot of data on children and family. And also you do have a lot of data, cross-sectoral data. Okay. So the WASH data you have, the child protection you have, and the early childhood development of child labor, you have those indicators. So, and then they are linked to education standards. When it comes to admin data, it can cover like quite wide coverage of the population, and it's an annual practice. So you can have a steady flow of information, which is very suitable for monitor the progress. Okay, and then it's real time. The survey data tend to be collected every 3 to 5 years, but admin data, if it's working, it's annual at least, or it could be even collected every monthly, or even weekly, or daily, as you have seen today. And the cost is lower because it's integrated in the system. So today I'm talking about why it's important to integrate admin data and household survey data, because by doing so, for example, these are use cases, you'll be able to unpack the foundational learning outcomes, which is really core education target globally and especially for Africa. Right? So then you will be able to understand to what extent the children are learning, and you can also unpack, okay, is it because the children are located in rural areas, or is it because they're coming from the poor household, or is it because teachers teaching those children are poorly trained? So by looking at both household survey data and admin data, you have a better understanding what are driving the high or low performance of the children, right? And also, like you can look at the education, how efficient the education expenditures are used. Household survey data will have no information about education expenditures, but EMIS for DHIS2 can. Then by bringing the resources data and outcome data, you can analyze how effectively the current policy is training children or training teachers to teach better. Okay, and also we can talk about, like, you can analyze a lot about the cross-sectoral indicators. So by bringing two data sources together, it's not just a summation 1 + 1, right? So you can multiply the power of the data you have. And then so this is what I'm seeing picturing in my head. So you have EMIS data, and what kind of data you can bring in is the school ID, school management data, whether the head teacher is the male or female, what's the teacher training they have. Do they have latching? Do they have washroom? Like how accessible school is? You can get that kind of data from them. And then from household survey data, you can have information about children and family. Right? And then once you have integration data, then you can combine those data to analyze policy situation. Okay. And then so we are engaging with Fiji and Eswatini to implement a project called the mixed data and linking to admin data. And so Fiji, the initial data is not published, but initial report is published. And that's what we are having a conversation. So the DHIS2 is operating in Eswatini. There could be a possible opportunity to talk more about how we can work together. So the vision that our team has is that we want to develop a global methodology to how to link household survey data to mix. So as of now, I don't think the mixing or the linking admin and household survey data has been very successful. But in the future, it should become a standard practice. Whenever household survey is practiced, they have to be implemented in mind that the data will be connected to admin data, because those data sources are complementary to each other. So that's what we are envisioning in the future. And also there is a theoretical reason why should we combine the data for education, because the education, we do have a lot of theories about production, and in education it's called that the joint production function. So it's not a super linear process. If you have kids, you know how difficult it is to teach. It's about the child characteristics. Children have the characters, and then schools, and your support, and also how you motivate your children is different from a child to another. So in education, we say the education production function is quite complex, but at least we have supply and demand side. that we have to consider. And for the supply side, you can get a lot of information from it. So what kind of teachers, what kind of schools, what kind of education are provided to children. And the demand side is more about household. And then you do have a lot of information about children, parents from household data. And also community is very important, especially in the context of Africa. So by combining EMIS and household survey, theoretically speaking, we are looking at both supply and demand factors of education, which are quite important when we analyze the education production function. All right, so I think there was a question about the reliability of EMIS, and then EMIS is reliable, but theoretically speaking, even the data collected by EMIS is super accurate. You could have discrepancies between household survey data, and mainly because of the population. Very often because of the population data are not matching each other. And also the numerator attendance data is collected from the household survey, but EMIS collect the enrollment, which are different. And the second point is that once you have both the household survey data and EMIS data, you could do a new estimation of educational outcomes using the technique called the small area estimation. So basically, the admin data help train household survey data to make a better estimation at lower level, like district or sub-district levels. So the EMIS data can be used to kind of resources to train your model, which comes from the main data comes from the household survey data. That is very helpful, for example, the Ministry of Education to estimate application rates at a very low level. And then the last point of my presentation is that the household surveys. The one example is child functioning module, right? So there is a child functioning measurements global standard, which can be used by EMIS to collect data for children with disabilities. There are some technical issues, but in essence, it's possible. And then once you are able to do it, then you can turn your EMIS more inclusive, which is needed in so many countries. So then what we are doing right now is to analyze the what's called the inter-rater reliability, meaning, so we have this question developed for parents, okay? So we developed a question asking parents, does your child have this kind of disability, right? Let me put it that way. But we don't know if teacher can give me the same answer, right? So I have to make sure that if you want to measure child functioning difficulties, child disabilities, I have to make sure that the answer I'm getting from the mother and the answer I'm getting from teachers need to agree. So that's what's called the inter-rater reliability analysis. And we are doing that to see which kind of the child functioning can be identified, well-identified teachers. If it's difficult, then what kind of support teacher needs? So that kind of study is being done. Once it's done, then I think we are in a better position to roll out into them in next year or after. So that's kind of the merit of using the existing tool to improve the admin data system. I think this is speaker. Okay, but I think I'm done. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Suguru. And now moving to a very exciting project called Data Must Speak by UNICEF as well. We're actually a GPE KICS partner country as well, which is really great partner project. So welcome, Jean-Luc. Thank you so much for being here. We had the opportunity to meet you in Banjul, of course, as well. So thanks again for sharing the amazing work being done on Data Must Speak. So I'll just get your presentation up and running. And for our colleagues that are online, if you could just stand close enough to the speaker here, that would be great. There we go. Thank you so much.
And change the slide. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, thank you, Sophia. Thank you, everyone. I'm Jean-Luc Amigo, education specialist for UNICEF HQ in New York. So my presentation will cover two topics. The first one is about the Data Must Speak initiative, and the second is about main finding of EMIS diagnosis in West and Central Africa. Really try to go quickly through this. So the first topic, as I mentioned, is about Data Must Speak initiative, which is an initiative aiming to enhance the use of EMIS data in the education section to support a government resource allocation and decision making. This initiative was born out from the observation that the education sector usually collects a lot of information from schools, but more often those information are not sufficiently used to support planning, equitable resource allocation, and usually this will result in terms of inequity in terms of resource allocation to schools, disparities in terms of learning outcome, and most often it is to the detriment of children from the poorest families or children living in a remote area. So as you can see, usually we have a lot of database from the education sector, but spread, not sufficiently harmonized and connected, and this will limit the use as can do, as Suglu just mentioned. If we are able to link multiple sources of information, we are better in position to provide, to do a rich full analysis and to inform decision making. So this is just an illustration of inequity in terms of human resource teacher allocation. The indicator that is presented here is a pupil-teacher ratio, the average number of students by teacher. So you can see how it is inequitable from Guinea-Bissau to in the last country is to go where the variance is lower than other countries. And this is the same example. And the idea, the assumption behind that is that obviously many factors can explain these inequities. But among those factors, we can include insufficient use of data in the planning and implementation, the low accountability of actors and the system, and no feedback to the community for a lower demand for accountability which result in low accountability, demand for accountability from the communities. So the idea behind the Data Must Speak initiative is that if we have data that are harmonized, linked, connected, and shared, and used more effectively, we can improve decision making and help decision makers to prioritize resources and support to the district and school that needs them the most, and help identify high performing school given the context in which the school are implemented, to share their lesson for success, and also increase in community involvement and agency. So the Data Must Speak initiative was launched on 2014 with the support of those partners, including GPE, NORAD, Jacob Foundation. And the main objective is to strengthen the use of data to enhance governance and management of education system, enhance social accountability and demand for high quality education at local level, and improve global knowledge regarding what works or not for community participation and the use of data for improved equity and learning. UNICEF is supporting implementation of Data Must Speak in about 17 countries today. And common activities supported implemented in the the framework of data must speak include the strengthening of EMIS data, EMIS and a data harmonization, developing indices and formulas to support government resource allocation for more equity in the resource allocation and decision making, developing dashboard at school level or district level with target to schools and communities and the school supervisor at the inspectorate or district level. Case studies on the association between community and parental participation and school performance, and the research on positive deviant, what we call positive deviant school. So what we have here is I've not spent time on this as in the bazaar use of as you have those who will visit first will have more opportunity to look at this closely. It is an example of dashboard at school level in Zambia, which presents information coming from the EMIS. The main add to value added of the school, the dashboard is to bring the school in comparison to other schools in the same area and in the district, and to provide a kind of reference of benchmark on comparison. These are still an example, and this is also an example of use to identify those schools that I call the positive deviant school in the red circle, that is performing more than what we predicted according to the resource and the context in which they are implemented. So this is a simplified example of dashboard for a community pictures instead of numbers, and for better reading, to better accessibility to illiterate population. So as application, we can use a dashboard, and more globally, the data must speak product can be used to prioritize financial and pedagogical support, as it can either help, for example, this graph, it can help the school, the district supervisor to identify those schools in the red, so that are performing lower than what was expected to them, given the amount of resource they have been allocated with and the context they are implemented. To establish performance contract, that is an example in Togo, develop school improvement plan at the community level, school level, and rebalance allocation of resource for greater equity. Still in the product, we have also developed these two. There are in fact 3 of them, but only 2 was a graph design and published, accessible online. It's a guideline and practical implementation tool for community engagement in the education sector. I'll pass through. These are still example of dashboard. As an outcome, we had evaluation of a data must speak project in the Zambia, and one of the outcome of the use of school dashboard reported in the evaluation was that it's when associated with training to the user, it has a positive impact on the reduction of dropout and the improvement of exam pass rate and better learning environment. Means those schools where you have where the school management community has received their dashboard and have been trained to use it, a better school environment, because they are more active in putting these facilities or maintaining the school facilities. And quickly on the positive deviance research. Positive deviance research is basically to try to find those schools that are outperforming given the amount of resource they have been allocated and the difficulty, the hardness of the context the school is implemented. So the idea of a positive deviance school is to first identify those schools through data analysis, basically with primarily a EMIS data, but sometimes with additional data collection, especially on communities. So first identify those schools and then try to understand why those schools are outperforming and which kind of lesson we can learn from those schools and to use them and to put those lessons as scale for the other school. So this is basically what is behind the positive deviant school. So there are a lot of challenges that many have been already discussed here that are not available on time. We'll come back on these issues on the diocese on West and Central Africa. Lack of insufficient data, especially on learning outcome, there's a gap of data. Or data are available, I think Patrick mentioned it. Data sometimes are available, but not under the suitable format. We have them on paper, spread across the country, so it is not on a digital format, so difficult to centralize and to use them to build a dashboard. Insufficient material, human resource, and financial resource, especially when it comes to train the user on the use of the dashboard at school level, and especially where you have a greater turnover in schools management and school teachers. Let's skip these implementation modalities. Those who are interested in this, we can provide more information in the case bazaar. So the second topic is about the analysis on of data in West and Central Africa. This is doing this on behalf of Yakuba Jibo. I think he is connected here. He couldn't come, so I'm presenting on his behalf. He led the survey and this study in UNICEF office, regional office in West and Central Africa. So we have some generic constat, irregularity of EMIS data, about the timeliness and reliability, difficult reconciliation with population data in some cases, that is result in sometimes on reliability of data, EMIS data and indicator that we will compute on the basis of EMIS data. We have very irregular, low coverage and lack of comparability of data on learning outcome, infrequent and unsustainable international large-scale assessment, data available on few indicators for monitoring of SDG and the Continental Education Strategy 1725 of the African Union. Only 43% of the SDG indicators are informed by only 50% of countries in the region. No data and real-time monitoring system, especially for attendance, performance, and the retention in humanitarian context. I think those are the observations that led the regional office of UNICEF in West and Central Africa to try to come to do a more broader diagnosis on the EMIS in the region, to understand what was the issues, what are the root cause of this issue, and to come with a regional strategy to provide a kind of response to this problem. We discussed the reliability of EMIS data and discrepancy we can have on indicator computed on the basis of household survey or EMIS data. This is just an example of how the school a percentage of children that are not in school. Let's look at out of school, percentage of out of school children. So say on the horizontal axis is proved using the EMIS data, and the other is using the household survey data. We try to have the same year or with a difference of 1 year, because we don't have household survey data every year, and sometimes EMIS are not also regular. So we took that example of Chad, where when the household survey data is reporting 50% of children, school-age children not in school, from EMIS we are only 20%. So it is confusing for the Minister of Education, where you are 1 out of 5 children not in school, or 1 on 2 not in school is not the same story. But the issue at this stage, it is difficult to say if it is the issue is the EMIS, because the EMIS computation involves 2 sources of information. You have the numerator coming from the Ministry of Education, and the population data coming from census of the National Bureau of Statistics. So this is a real challenge, and that's why we're really welcoming the project, the idea of Suguru, to try to match those sources of information to bring a kind of more consistency between the various sources of information. So the main finding from the survey is first, insufficient public funding. This is something we raise all the time, and I think it is not, EMIS is not this the only set a line of aspect that is underfunded by the public government. Only 1 in 4 countries has a budget. Now, 1 in 4 countries has no budget line in the government budget for production of education statistics. And where you have a budget line, the plan but funding is insufficient and usually only cover the school census. I mean, the data collection that happens once a year. But once the data are collected, you need to process them and to make use of them. And sometimes there's no fund. And usually, even if you have the fund for the data collection, it even doesn't cover all the spending. 1 in 3 have budget line, both for school census and learning assessment. The learning assessment is usually the domain where you have less or no data when it's come to say to report on learning outcome. No coverage of issues such as education in emergency and out of school. We are talking about Western and Central Africa, a region that is almost in emergency. All countries in Western Central Africa are almost in emergency. Either it is the Sahel crisis or Boko Haram crisis or North America, Cameroon crisis, Lake Basin crisis. So there is crisis everywhere in the region. But almost only a few countries are collecting information on education in emergency. And where there is data collected on this aspect, usually is not connected to the EMIS. 3 in 4 countries do not include out of school children in the EMIS data. That is the understanding is that EMIS is based on school, and the information is primarily provided by the head of school. So they know what is happening in school, how many children is in school, but they don't know what is happening out of school. I've been talking about children not in school. Basically, the head of school cannot tell you children that are not in school. They can tell you who is in school. Yeah. But the institution that would be positioned to provide this kind of information, usually they don't have it because of lack of the low rate of child registration, birth registration. So we sometimes even don't know how many children we have in the area. Software, only 1 in 10 use software that is fully owned by the Ministry of Education, and the other either have no ownership of the software or are partial ownership. Very few countries, 1 in 3, have a real-time monitoring system for education. And in most cases, the real-time monitoring system is not nationally representative. Sometimes it is just a pilot and not integrated in the EMIS. You have an issue of human resource. Only 17% of the country have EMIS position filled by staff with appropriate profile, both at central and subnational level. In the other position, either you have vacant position or it is filled by staff who don't have the right profile. And of course, usually there's few opportunity or no opportunity to have training for those the EMIS staff that don't have. Okay. I think yes, it is the last one. The school ID, 1 in 4 countries still don't have a unique school ID in the EMIS database. And only half of countries use the same school ID across the databases. Usually you will have a lot of database, and each database will have their school ID, which make this provide an extra challenge when it comes to connect the database. In many cases, the school identifier is not sequential codes. Sometimes it is just automatic code that is generated through access of the database management system. You have regulation and strategy are more about school census, less than learning assessment. In 91% of country, education statistics are regulated by law, policy, guideline. That is pretty good. But only 50% include learning assessment in those regulations. That's why when you speak EMIS, people usually resume EMIS to the school census, excluding human resource information on human resource spending and learning outcome, learning assessment systems. Only 25% of countries have regulation and strategy to support both census and learning assessment. I think quickly that's what I had to share with you. Whether you want more information, you have the links who you should contact to have further information. Thank you very much.
So very sorry, there is no time for demos. Time is up because it's a group photo and we're not allowed to not join the group photo. But I guess, Alfredo, will you have a use case bazaar where you have a demo? Or otherwise we can maybe arrange a time for the demo to be shown, because that's really interesting.
Christine, we've got a use case bazaar tonight where we might be able to see Alfredo. He's double booked, but we hope for some app demos, and we'll see, as well as Jerry and CD for the school report card, as well as Jean-Luc to deep dive a little bit more into the Data Must Speak initiative.
So no problem, that is not in the session.
And then tomorrow we've got a DHIS2 for Education Expert Lounge where you can also come and meet and discuss. So a little bit more time.
So fine. So
Great.
stay in touch, the community. So it's important for everyone that shall sign up for the CUP, so we can keep in touch and continue to develop this interest group. So see you all in the group photo over there, and then later in the use case bazaar.
And thanks so much. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.